Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me?
Hello, yeah.
Hey, how's it going? All right. Do you have video or are you just voice? I can't tell.
I do have video, but it's too late. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. How's it going?
What is this
You're live,
background
by the
music?
way.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm very well. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I've only watched the first half of your video, by the way. I still have to watch the second half. So if I don't know all the points you've made, that's why. I will get around to it. But
well, my favorite bit comes next, but that's just
oh no! Oh no! What's that one about?
The 10 tons of HIV.
Oh,
the bookmark.
The 10 tons of HIV. Okay,
10
well,
tons of HIV.
I will watch the whole thing. But what did you think about my commentary on the first half? What are your thoughts on that?
I only caught the last few minutes. I was in like another.
Watch this video first. I don't want to watch an hour video about shit that happened 6 years ago. I don't care. But I'm assuming it was a decent enough put together. Seems like most people said it was pretty good.
Part of the house doing stuff, but
okay, no
yeah,
worries.
I was like, I only asked to call because you skipped over the bit where I said that the lead up to the interview.
Yeah, someone asked me to go back, and I did.
Obviously, I saw that you interviewed. I put that in my video. I show you interviewing Panos.
Yeah.
So
like, what did you think went on there? Like, what did you think was happening? Did you think we were like?
I just like
faking it all?
Well, no, my sister is a journalist. I know that people do film stuff after the fact. I just thought the whole like the evidence board and the like the shipping app stuff. And like the porn acting. I just thought that was kind of funny, you know.
But like you introduced it as Lauren Southern is a lying fuck fake journalist.
Well, what I thought with that
when you just said you know your sister does this and people set up shots.
Well, they don't build fake evidence boards like 3 weeks later. That's something I think that's maybe limited to the alternative media.
It wasn't a fake evidence board, though. It was just an evidence board that was on the wall that we actually did end up using. It was a bit of a prop for sure, but it wasn't like fake.
Okay, I'll take your word. So about Panos' lawyer.
Yep.
Saying the phrase "we were laundering it."
Yep.
Do you have the full footage of that? Out of interest.
I can get it. Yeah, it's all on hard drives. They would be hard drives in London, not here, since my. Because
I'm just very intrigued about the idea of a lawyer who would like admit that he.
Well, he didn't know it. He had no idea he was being recorded, obviously.
Yeah, but even just speaking to a total stranger as a lawyer, like, you think
well,
you'd know better.
The lawyer admitted what? Fuck, dude, her music is so loud.
Of course, there was and I won't lie about this, there's obviously with journalism, and this has happened to me the other way around, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I thought this person was actually sympathetic to me. There's a degree of, you have to be like, yes, I'm super sympathetic, otherwise people won't be honest, unfortunately.
Yeah, so what I was thinking with, so is there more clarification off that recording? Because the two big things I felt that were very missing from that interview with the lawyer was no clarifying question. So him following up saying we were laundering it. We don't know if that's him describing the charges, right? Or actually saying.
You know what? I'm gonna ask I do not have it on my computer here. The hard drives with all of that footage on it. When we were traveling, so we went to Turkey where we had all of our stuff confiscated. That was after our trip to Greece. We were literally mailing hard drives back to London where my editors were throughout our trip. I didn't take any of them home. I was sent edited copies of the film, full transcripts, and usually we would do like, you know how when you open Discord you can do a screen share with editing and watching and cutting, we do that. So I don't own all of the footage on my own hard drive. I have obviously all the final copies, but I can absolutely request and source that if you want more context.
Yeah,
It'll probably take me a minute, but I'm
happy to do that. Did you edit that video? Did you edit that video?
Yeah, I was part of the editing for sure.
Well,
and it's been like 3 years.
Yeah, I know. I'm not gonna try to put you on the spot or anything.
No. Like, I'm happy to actually source it because I know for a fact we wouldn't misportray anything to that degree, especially.
Yeah, because in the video, instead of a clarifying question, because again, that is one thing I know that journalists are supposed to do. I'm sure you'd agree. You're supposed to ask because he asks Panos the clarifying question. He asks, "Can I just clarify? You categorically deny the charges." He had to make him say it twice with the question preceding it. Whereas all I hear is, I think it's Kaylin's voice going, "What?" As in like just making up like almost just a grunt. So there is no clarifying question, and we don't know the lawyer's name.
Yeah, so okay, George was talking to him off to the side. But yeah, I can go and grab the full footage because I have no doubt in my mind that that is exactly what he said. And you know what? Did you end up going over the Ariel Ricker footage as well in your film, in your little video?
No, I think Jose, the YouTuber, had already covered that to kind of an extent, and it wasn't. It kind of was relevant to NGOs, but this was most of my data was specifically
Around.
NGOs in the central Mediterranean.
Not okay,
So
yeah, because it's no secret that like these NGOs are often partaking in sketchy activities, especially after talking to Ariel Ricker. She was like, yeah, absolutely. We have people that, you know, go and take jet skis across the water. We call them angels, and they grab people and bring them over. We absolutely are training people how to get refugee status, pretending they're Christian and persecuted, because as you know, you even mentioned it in your video, Turkey is a refugee safe country.
Yeah, I'm very curious. What country in particular are Christians getting persecuted in that Muslims aren't?
Well, Turkey is majority Islamic, so that's what the claim would be coming from, because it's really difficult, obviously. When I was in Lesbos, there's a place called the
Christian persecution Turkey. I wonder what the extent of this is. Modern Turkey. The BBC reported in 2014 that Turkey's Christian population had declined from 20% to 0.2% since 1914. I'm pretty sure Turkey did some fucked up bad shit a long time ago. I don't know how current it is. The U.S. Commissions on International Religious Freedom designated Turkey as a country of particular concern for religious freedom, noting systematic limitations on the freedoms of religion or belief.
Life Jacket Graveyard. And we put footage of it. It's just like hundreds, thousands of life jackets in a pile from people who have just landed on the shore. And in it, you can find people's documents, like partially
Why is this guy
burned
going to war
or
with me
thrown
already?
away.
Chill.
And typically that's because they've been told by traffickers or by NGOs, you can't have your documentation on you because you can be deported if you have your passport and you've come from like a non-refugee country. Or if you've already got refugee status, obviously you're going to be sent back because it's like, no, you can't country shop. You've already been given safe asylum. What I'm saying is we found like refugee papers for Turkey in this pile.
Yeah, so what I'm asking about is the thing with the Christians thing, because like I know, well, the main refugee countries, I suppose, where there's like Christians being persecuted would be Nigeria, right? Because of Boko Haram. That's like the main country where like a persecuted Christian under a Muslim regime would come from. But then I don't know why you would have to say you're Christian to prove you're persecuted, because Muslims get persecuted by Boko Haram as well.
Well, no, this is in Turkey. They're claiming in Turkey I face persecution for whatever reason. So this is people coming from Turkey. So they're not necessarily saying it's going to stick, but your chances of getting a refugee status after traveling through Turkey.
Well,
the claim could be like, as a persecuted Christian from X country, I don't feel safe in a majority Muslim country again. I need to come to Europe.
You don't actually need to prove that you don't need to stay in the first safe country you arrive in, though. That's not the law.
So you can country shop? Is that like can you cite where that comes from?
Well,
Let's look that up real quick. Do you have to stay in first country as refugee? To avoid abuses, European law, the Dublin regulation, requires that asylum seekers have their asylum claim registered in the first country they arrive in, and that the decision of the first EU country they apply in is the final decision in all EU countries. So this is saying that asylum seekers have their asylum claim registered there, but do they have to stay there? Do refugees have to stay in the first country they reach? What website is this? Hold on. Full fact. Fights bad information. Team independent fact checker. The UN Refugee Convention does not make this requirement of refugees, and UK case law supports this interpretation. Refugees can legitimately make a claim for asylum in the UK after passing through other safe countries. Being recognized as a refugee gives you the right to not be returned to the country you fled, as well as a minimum standard of rights and freedoms in a safe country. And asylum seeker is someone who's in need, the right to seek asylum from return. Practically speaking, asylum seeker is someone who's applied for refugee status. In the UK, once an asylum seeker has had their application processed, they may receive permission to stay as a refugee for 5 years. That's for the UK. There's no obligation of refugees to claim asylum in the first safe country they reach. This evidence is wrong to claim that under the Geneva Convention, refugees should seek refuge in the first safe country they come to. It contains no obligation, either explicit or implicit, for refugees to claim asylum in the first country they reach, according to immigration lawyer Colin Yeo. This means that asylum seeker can arrive in France before traveling to the UK and still claim they can be a refugee. It is then down to the UK to review that application. Destiny, you'd know this if you watched the LonerBox video. I do not have like an obsessive hatred where I'm going to be watching videos that cover drama that's like 5 years old. You guys can watch that shit. You can jerk off to it. Make sure that you go inside your bedroom and dig under your bed for your secret cum socks. You can go jerk off into it as you watch it. I just don't care that much. If it was like a 10-minute video maybe, but not like a fucking hour-long video over some shit from like, I just don't care that much. But okay, I like doing my own research anyway. I feel like intuitively that makes sense too. Because imagine you have an agreement set up and you're like fucking like Germany, and it's like, wait, is Germany the southeast most country in the European Union? I actually don't know that. Hold on, maybe not. No, not even close. No, wait, that wouldn't make sense because yeah, why did Germany get so many refugees? Oh, I guess just a lot of people like went up there. If you were like Bulgaria or Greece or whatever, and you if you were like Bulgaria and Greece and this was like the agreement, you would get fucked every time there was like a refugee crisis because you'd be forced to take on every single person of like the first person that got there, right? Like it makes sense to me that that's not how you would do that, right? Like because why would any country be like, yeah, shit, well, we're the first stop, yeah.
I'm just saying it's the United Nations
Was that her? Oh.
Convention on Refugees.
Can you read that? Like, I'd be curious.
Yeah, I'll show. Okay, there is a common misconception. I'll find it. Was it Article 30? My notes for this are fucking enormous.
One of my favorite things about having more casual conversations with people is that we can just like, okay, well, let's just stop and Google this real quick. Let's like stop and look at it. Like, because it would be so nice to resolve this on the spot. Because I just Googled this. It took me like 2 minutes, right? And then if they want to find something different, then they can. It would be so nice to just like resolve these issues on the spot instead of like, oh, well, I'll look it up in the future because that's never going to happen, right?
But all of the certainly I've gone to the European Union a couple times and spoken to people who are policymakers on this, and that was one of the #1 contentions that was always spoken about by policymakers was the problem of country shopping.
Problem of country shopping. Is that really a problem though? My imagination would be is that you probably can apply to a ton of countries and then they choose whether or not they want to accept you, right? It wouldn't just be the first place that you end up at, right? That seems like it would cause all sorts of horrible incentives. Imagine, too, if it was the first place you wound up at. How many people would try to be illegally sneaking through all those other, like, shittier countries? No offense to the southeast, right? Like,
in Europe, there is the Dublin regulation, which says you don't have to stay in the first safe country, but it'll probably harm your claim if you do. But that's within Europe.
But that's within Europe,
so that's,
right? So that doesn't include Turkey.
Doesn't include Turkey, and even the thing within Europe, you could say the United Nations still has a problem with that because the whole logic of saying you don't have to stay in the first safe country is you're just putting a very arbitrary burden on whichever country is next door, right? Like the fact that if the nearest safe country is a country of like 5 million people and they're massively in debt, then it would make sense as an international community to allow people to move onwards. So that's why the idea of safe third countries, and I mentioned this in the video as well, but there's also the whole thing. Yeah, so that's the thing about, I'm trying to find this fucking, where is it?
Because obviously that really does, that's one thing that I spoke to a lot of migrants about when I was on the ground. They were like, man, we didn't film all of it because obviously a ton of migrants told us like, no, we're not comfortable being on footage. We don't want to be filmed. And we respected that. We really made sure we only filmed people, especially if they were migrating and potentially, escaping a violent regime. In some cases, because I do believe genuine refugees exist within that. Well, I think the majority are typically just migrating for economic reasons. And when we were talking to people off camera that didn't necessarily want to be filmed, they were quite often telling us like, man, like, yeah, we were really screwed over being told we could actually get refugee status in these countries. We were really screwed over being given this false information that we were going to be given somewhere to live, be given asylum, because we're being told we're illegal migrants, especially because the traffickers will tell them to destroy their passports, so they actually have no way to even apply. And to be fair to the governments, how are you supposed to give refugee status to someone who has no ability, isn't from a refugee, designated country, has no ability to prove who they are, and has zero ability to prove what their background is or even their identity.
Yeah, okay, so I covered that as well. Like, there are supposed to be international laws around assisting people who don't have documents, because there can actually be a few reasons. Like, some of it can be you can be from a country that is absolutely riddled with human rights abuses, but you can be going to a country like Italy where they consider Libya a safe country, which it absolutely isn't. So
Okay.
yeah, like you can have, but again, like that's just more of like kind of a separate issue. I can send you that law of, but yeah, that is like something that I covered a little bit as well. But I've sent you the link there. The article in the UN law is contracting states shall not impose penalties on account of their illegal entry or presence on refugees who coming directly from a territory where their life or freedom was threatened. So that's why the term coming directly gets misconstrued, but then there are separate UN articles where they explain that coming directly is based on whether or not they claimed asylum and got settled. So if they claimed asylum and got settled in Turkey, and then destroyed that and tried to go somewhere else, that would be a crime.
Okay,
That
so
would be,
yeah.
But if they just got to Turkey and then decided to move afterwards before claiming asylum, that's fine.
Okay, so I see what you mean there, and that actually tends to be a big problem is they won't actually apply, not as in they won't apply, they'll try, but they won't have the actual background to be able to get refugee status in a country because they don't have a genuine claim to it. So then they'll try to country shop and see which country will let them claim it because they don't actually have a claim. And that tends to be the problem there, which is a big question I wanted to ask you. Do you see a difference between migrants and refugees, and do you think that difference is important?
Yeah, I mentioned that as well. Yeah, don't worry. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah,
I just thought, so for you'll probably notice, I feel like I'm just repeating my own script. You'll probably notice that I used migrant and refugee kind of interchangeably in that video.
Yeah,
because
it's a big pet peeve of mine.
It's a pet peeve of mine as well. And it's because that's what they are at sea. You don't know. NGOs can't assess someone's legal state. Even Mare Nostrum didn't have the power to assess legal status of someone they rescued. They take them to the country, whichever they're registered to, or just whichever country respects the dignity of those saved. And then the country decides whether or not they're a refugee or a migrant. So that's why you can't really call them either, which
so
is
why
why
do you use refugee then? When you
I use migrant as well.
It's a bit biased.
No, I've used both because it's both. I don't think there's ever been a boat that had 100% no refugees. I don't think I've seen that anywhere.
I don't know, because there would be a lot. I mean, any boat with the majority North Africans, which we've seen, absolutely would be people that would not have a lot, anyways, would not have legitimate claim.
Yeah, well, but again, the point is here is that we're talking about what happens at sea, and the idea is at sea. How do you find out? You don't send them back. You find out by processing them in a country where they can be processed. And North African countries,
how do you process people
like,
who are destroying their identification and lying?
There are processes to that. Like it does take a long time, but there are ways around that. Like that. I mean, this is like there are UN articles about this and what you're supposed to do.
But can you see that people are deliberately doing this to make it difficult to ascertain who they are, perhaps because they don't actually fit into refugee status?
Of course I can, and that's why it's a crime. It's a crime if you're found out doing that, or if like you go through because these vetting processes are pretty interrogatory, aren't they? Like they grill them pretty hard to find these things out. And most refugees, they come on their own because it's very dangerous to come with your family across the Mediterranean. They come on their own, and then you have to find out who their family is. And if they give you a name and you can't find who they are, then they get stuck as well. So like even people who do that get stuck in a gray zone, and that can become quite difficult for all parties, which is why I think that's like a problem with the smuggling business, which is why I think you agree with me that Mare Nostrum should come back, because smugglers should not be doing this. I think rescue missions are fine. It turns out that there was actually something in the BBC just yesterday that there are people crossing on dinghies that they just they just buy them and then go themselves because they can't find smugglers. So that's what the rescue missions are for, is for people who are going to come regardless of what's happening. But yeah, absolutely, smugglers getting people to destroy their documents is insane. They shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, and to me, as obviously, and this is something that people really misunderstand, and I think I don't agree with how you portrayed it. You were kind of like, yeah, Lauren thinks it's based and awesome that people just, shut down missions to help people. Like, of course I don't want people drowning, and that's why I personally support the Australian system, which has led to 0 people drowning, but that doesn't work if you just get rid of the NGOs. You actually have
I
to
have a question about
close
that,
the borders as well, because
I have
you
a
still got
question
to
about
draw.
that, though.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so Italy tried to do something very similar to this. What they did was do you know the memorandum that they did with Libya? The Coast Guard?
Explain it.
So Salvini signed, I think it was actually pre-Salvini, but yeah, they signed a memorandum with Libya, basically getting them to, do you have your headphones on?
I do. I'm just.
Yeah, you just moved it, okay. They signed a memorandum with
Hold of Destiny.
Libya, the Libyan Coast Guard, saying that they would financially support Libyans to rescue people and then bring them back to Libya. That was like their border policing strategy, right?
Okay, so wait, they would pay. Sorry, can you explain that? I hurt myself trying to open my beer. I apologize.
The Italian, it's an interesting technique. The Italians paid the Libyan Coast Guard to intercept migrants/refugees to bring them back to Libya. They were supporting the Libyan Coast Guard to intercept people on dinghy boats and bring them back to Libya.
Yeah. They do things like that anyways everywhere without any sort. Like when I was in Turkey, there were gendarmes looking for us when we were on the water, like in helicopters. So they tend to, like, border security tends to happen both ways in countries like that because the smuggling is so bad for Libya and Turkey as well. But like that, to me, from my understanding, that happens anyways. Like it was happening when I was in Morocco too. When I was talking to the traffickers, they were like, "Oh, we keep monitoring of when the Moroccan Coast Guard are in certain areas for when we launch our boats."
So my question to you is that like what you, assuming that like the smuggling business in Libya is massive, it's not really comparable to Australia where I think the numbers of smuggling is comparatively lower because Libya is a big country. So I'm just wondering what you
there's
think
a
should
lot
be
of
done
smuggling
with
that does
regards
happen from Asia.
So my question
South
is,
Pacific,
if you're intercepting people who are supposedly, who they say are fleeing war or terror or whatever, and you stop them making that journey or just send them back, then the question is like, you might be stopping drowning. I don't really know about Australia. I didn't look into that. But if you apply that to Europe, then the question becomes, if they're not drowning, then where are they going? And in the case of Libya, which Generation Identity wanted to do, they wanted to send them back to Libya. Well, in the case of Libya, you end up in a detention center where you are raped, tortured, abused, you have a forced disappearance, you're trafficked within Africa. Basically, like, you didn't drown, but you might as well be dead. Like if you get intercepted by the Libyan Coast Guard and brought back to Libya, that's your life over. You're just a sack of meat with no human rights.
Okay, so see that's an interesting question, because is that not a problem with the Libyan system in general, as with many systems worldwide, many that don't qualify for refugee status but just have extremely, authoritarian regimes in most of the world, rather than that of enforcing.
Well, it's an authoritarian regime that Italy is supporting, though, and that Generation Identity was happy to send rescuees back to before determining their migration status. So if Generation Identity was rescuing people who they didn't know were refugees,
let me ask,
and sending them back to Libya.
So, okay, this is actually something that's really interesting to me. What do you think would happen to you if you were a refugee caught leaving Turkey by the gendarme, or a migrant or refugee caught leaving Turkey by the gendarme and brought in?
I don't know. I didn't look into Turkey. Probably bad, right?
Well, that's the thing. There's an assumption that you'll be treated horribly by these countries, right? They're these horrible persecution countries that. So I was arrested by the gendarme, essentially as a migrant, because we were found on illegal border territory. We didn't realize it was illegal territory. We were trying to get filming of the border, and they arrested us as though we were migrants trying to leave the country. And even more so, I was with two gay film guys, and I am a woman who has done quite a lot of anti-Islam commentary. We were terrified, to say the least, right? And one of the big assumptions was, you know, as a critic of Islam with 2 gay film guys, we are going to be screwed. This is like Midnight Express. We're going to go to jail. What actually happened is we were brought in by the military. We were held for a while, questioned. They actually brought in a doctor to check and make sure our health was okay, and we hadn't been beaten or attacked or anything happened to us by the guards. I remember her walking in and almost falling backwards. She was so shocked to see that we were white, because she's like, I'm so used to dealing with, you know, migrants that are like Middle Eastern, not white people trying to cross borders. But she's like, yeah, it's my full-time job. I come in and make sure everyone's healthy. They gave us chicken, they gave us cookies and cigarettes.
No,
and
you.
The questioning part was a bit more serious and intense after like 10 hours of being told we might face jail time. But we were actually treated really, really well. So I do wonder, and you know what? I was pulled in for questioning in Morocco too, where
What are you suggesting here? I'm sorry, what are you suggesting here about Libya?
What I'm suggesting, I'm about to finish here. Morocco, I saw someone get beaten by the police when I was pulled in for questioning, which was horrific, but I also saw people just being talked to. What I'm suggesting is, like, does that exact thing happen in every single scenario? Like, I'll have to look into it a bit more, but is that like the protocol of the Libyan police, that if you are caught on a dinghy and we bring you back, we rape you and beat you, and that is like indefinitely your fate? Like, what is the research and data on that? Like, I don't doubt in some cases that does happen and that is horrific, but is that the actual protocol? What, like, do you have, I just feel like there are a lot of,
well, like if they have a guidebook saying you should beat the shit out of refugees, or just whether or not it happens, because there was a spike after that memorandum was drawn up. There was a spike in detentions and detention-related abuses in Libyan detention centers. So, yeah, like, I mean, okay, let's say it happens to what, like a 10% of the people who are intercepted. That's still you sending, like, people who you haven't determined the migration status of. You don't know whether they're legit or not, but you've sent them to a dangerous situation. By the way, Libya is decided by the UN to not be a safe port. They emphatically say you can't send people you rescue back to Libya.
Okay, when was that brought in? Because for me, it's all about like actually applying the maritime law, actually applying the migration law. So if it is,
what's the maritime law again?
Well, first of all, you know, you have to return people to the closest safe port. So if that is Turkey, you return them to Turkey. So you don't have to.
Sorry, go on.
Okay, you know, not migrating when you have no refugee status. And how do you, like, this is always a big question to me, because if the question becomes, if I am at sea and I leave a certain country and that country is potentially unsafe, like Libya, for me to be returned to, what happens if their passport has been destroyed? What happens here if they come over and they, you know, won't tell you where they're from? They have no claim to refugee status. The problem is that you are getting an unprecedented amount of people that can't be identified, that if you return to their original point of wherever they came from, you are told that you are cruel and horrible and condemning people to death, even if you're not. So how do you enforce any laws? How do you enforce any sort of system that keeps people out before they've shown their passport or proved who they are, when anyone can essentially dub themselves a refugee in danger by just going into the Mediterranean?
Well, I think I think it's like just over half of people get their asylum claims accepted and the rest of them get rejected. So it's actually like, it's a pretty strict process. But then again, that also means that a lot of people crossing the sea, so given that the sea, the central Mediterranean, is the most dangerous journey. So you'd expect the numbers of genuine refugees in there to probably be higher, but I can't prove that.
Someone made a good point in my chat too. They were like, if you stop the boats, they won't enter Libya to begin with and put themselves in that danger. That's true
because although people already face risk of getting intercepted, they still cross.
Right,
and
because
when
the
Mare
borders
Nostrum
are open
ended,
too.
They're which borders?
Because it's not like the Australian policy. If you try to enter the country, you'll just be sent to Christmas Island if you try to enter Australia. You won't be allowed in the country whatsoever. So while there are still countries that are allowing people entry, they're still going to keep crossing. So you need to end both. And your comparison I watched at the beginning with Mare Nostrum and Triton 1 is just simply, there was only a 7% difference in actual drowning. Still horrific, of course, but that graph makes it seem like way different. And one of the big reasons that increased the amount of drownings wasn't because there was less search missions by Mare Nostrum. It was because they started using more dinghy boats at the time, and dinghy boats unfortunately increased over time compared to fishing boats, and they're 20 times as dangerous compared to fishing boats. That's one other possible explanation. Of course, there's also the fact that significantly less traffickers were being arrested.
Yeah, I mean, the dinghy boats doesn't correlate exactly, because there was an increase in 2016 of dinghy boats. It went from 67 to 82%, but then NGO presence was higher in 2017 than 2016, but then dinghy boats dropped. So they don't really connect at all.
Dinghy boats went up with Triton 1, which is when the drownings happened.
Well,
and
the
then
dinghy boats
since then.
The dinghy boats, well, they went up and then dropped. They went up and dropped because for a period in 2016, the smuggling hub was moved to Sabratha in Libya, where the militias had control. And the thing with militias is they can smuggle whoever they want on whatever boat they want, and the customers can't complain. So that's kind of where that actually fits better, because the rescue mission correlation, it correlates for 1 year, but then it goes negative the other, so it doesn't really fit. I want to bring you back, actually, if you don't mind. You were wrong about the next port of safety. The term that the UN uses is next port of call, which can mean the next port of safety. But they also actually say at the end that there are plenty of instances where this is unclear. Like, they actually say it's unclear. But the overriding concern is the safety and dignity of the crew and the people rescued, which is why it's very contentious sending people to North Africa, because first of all, Libya is obviously not a safe port. It's a disaster, which is why I'm still so confused about why Generation Identity wanted to send them there. And then Egypt has had kind of authoritarian problems. And then Algeria, well, they recently deported a bunch of migrants without due process. Tunisia, I think, actually has a chance, but they don't really have an asylum process at the moment, so it would probably be useful to start funding that instead of Libya. But yeah, that's why, and obviously different EU countries have different impressions of what a safe country is. But again, I wonder if what you're saying we should do when these people are rescued, because the first big spike in refugees happened in 2011 when there wasn't a refugee response, but that was because the Libyan civil war happened. So I think the problem with pull factors is you're actually ignoring push factors, like why did people leave? Because even on a good year, your chance of dying in the Mediterranean is 1 in 50. Even when all the rescue missions were there, you are 1 in 50 chance of dying. So
when you've got a genuine refugee crisis, I obviously think that's a very different question. But certainly in 2016, 2017, when I was covering this stuff, the majority of people that I was meeting in refugee camps were, not from Syria, not from Libya. They were coming from countries which were not listed as refugee countries. And that's because these traffickers...
Listed by who?
Not in a current state of civil war or war in general, and actively listed as being able to apply for refugee status, which is why there are so many people living under bridges in Europe and living in camps not with refugee status all over the place. And this is another aspect that is really horrific. Camp Moria that I went to was burned down just this year because people were so sick of being there. They were like, I'd rather be back in Turkey right now. This place is horrible, and it just becomes a pay your way through system. Can you actually afford that? That's what it becomes when it becomes through the smuggler system. It isn't, are you an actual refugee? It's, can you afford to pay for the best trip over? And then once you get to Greece, can you afford to pay the doctor for a fake doctor's note that says you need to go to Athens? And then can you afford to pay a lawyer to make a good argument for you, even if you don't have the data? It actually kind of bastardizes the entire process for getting refugee status, sadly. But I do have to ask, do you understand that there needs to be a limited, this is unfortunate, like I'm still saying definitely some, but do you understand that there needs to be a limited amount of dependents brought into a country under refugee status in order for that system to function?
What do you mean by dependence?
So people who obviously are in refugee status are typically leaving their country in a moment's notice. Right now, it wouldn't be somewhere within Europe. There's no country in Europe that is in an active war, other than, I mean, you could maybe argue Ukraine. But so typically people are migrating to countries where they don't necessarily speak the language, they have no connections, in a lot of cases no family, no, if you're a genuine refugee, no money to pay for a home in a lot of cases, somewhere to live. You need support, undeniably. You're not going to be able to just waltz in and get a job right away. So do you recognize that for these people to enter a country and for them to be genuinely supported and put into a position where they can continue to live their own life in a meaningful way, that number has to be limited to a certain amount?
Yeah, that's why I think this first safe country thing is really stupid, because what happened in Europe was that you had this concentration in like it's southern Italy and southern Spain, places with massive like economic issues and debts and all that couldn't like handle more people, whereas they could have easily gone up to places like whether it was like France or Germany or northern Spain or even the UK, where the UK definitely has a labor shortage right now.
Massively full in Italy, massively full in Germany. Like they were, even back in 2015, they were all packed in Porte de la Chapelle and that right on the border, and they were all packed in. Sorry, Porte de la Chapelle wasn't near the border. That's oh my goodness, this is where I got arrested. Why can't I remember the name of it? It's that canal.
You have to remember where you get arrested.
I know. How could I not remember this?
Too many times. Huh?
Starts with a C. I'm gonna get a map up here, but Porte de la Chapelle was like Paris. Map of France.
But again, that's why I would say that what the EU should have done, the EU should have actually been able to gather their resources in a much more useful way. Calais, yeah. Which is why the EU should have been able to pull their resources a lot better, so they could allocate people more evenly and in a much more pragmatic way. Whereas right now, you have like
what is
one
a much
country
more pragmatic way? What does that look
a pragmatic way is like, well, one thing is getting rid of work bans on people who are currently seeking asylum. So if your asylum claim is still...
Can somebody explain why that exists? This is one of the things that I've never understood, is that for a lot of asylum seekers, they're banned from like working. But it seems like that just like makes everything so much shittier. Like I think that was a huge problem in Sweden and Germany, where you'd have these refugees coming in, and then the people would call them lazy because they're not doing anything. But then you're not allowed to actually work. Why? I never understood that rationale.
Happening in the UK, you're not allowed to work, which is stupid. Like these people want to work generally, and
it's to prevent economic migrants.
The other thing is
maybe, I don't know.
Just actually looking at ways that different countries might not have the infrastructure to take refugees and other countries do. I don't buy for 1 second, by the way, that Germany is full. Like there have been refugee crises throughout the centuries of like millions of people arriving in countries of less than 15 million people, and economies can function like that because you add workers to the economy.
That's true. Even post 2013, Germany was like still turning huge budget surpluses. Like the idea that there was like a strain on the system, I don't think that ever was borne out in any evidence.
I think the problem there is typically people who have come in, they actually don't even have the capability to work, because in Paris maybe a bit different, and this was actually quite sad because obviously a lot of people coming from different countries in Africa that had previously been colonized by the French could speak French, so they could actually speak the language, but they just had no legitimate claim to asylum, so they couldn't get any papers, they couldn't work because they had no actual right to migrate there.
Well, that's what I think. That's why I think that's a problem with Paris, with France, and a lot of these countries that are.
Shadow Elm, $5. I wonder how the right will respond to the incoming refugee crisis that will happen cause of climate change. Minds will be blown.
Yeah, who knows, my dude.
drumming up anti-immigrant sentiment is they're not really thinking about pragmatism. That whole thing of like just leaving undocumented people under a bridge is a waste. Like those people want to work. That's what they said
you
to you. They said
understand why
that
you can't give someone status who hasn't applied for it, right? You understand why you can't just have no immigration laws, because every single person worldwide would want to move to France immediately. That was in a poor country. And I'm not saying, like, it sucks that there's a large amount of the world that has been born in impoverished countries. That's horrible. We want to change that situation. But you can only have so many people that migrate into your country that are largely going to be dependent. So you can't change your migration laws just because someone's already there. Oh, you already came? Well, I guess shrug our shoulders. We'll just give you the right to work and live here if you don't actually fit into the status, because then that opens up for everyone. I'll just come over from India. I'll just come over from China. I'll come over from Canada, and can I be French now and work and live here even though I haven't put in any application? That wouldn't fly anywhere in the world. Doesn't matter if it's a European country or not. I wouldn't expect any country to do that for me. I wouldn't move to India and say, hey, give me citizenship because I'm already here anyway.
Well, this didn't happen, though, because when the Balkan route opened, most people stayed in Syria and Jordan and Lebanon and Turkey. The vast majority of refugees did not enter Europe from the refugee crisis. Barely.
Yeah.
And even when the Balkan route opened, even when Viktor Orban, that fucking dipshit, was like basically directing people into West... Even basically directing people with his little half-built walls into Western Europe. Like, when he was doing that, people stayed in Lebanon and other places anyway.
His people didn't want mass migration in their country. Are they not allowed to have their opinion and vote on that?
I think if you want to be part of the European Union, then yeah, you should probably abide by international laws. Yeah.
Uh-oh. She Googling.
So you think that the European Union should have more power than the people within a country?
That's literally the point of being part of the European Union. There's going to be some superseding thing, of course. If you want all of the benefits, you want access to the European Union, of course you're going to have to abide by their bylaw. That's like saying, like, do you think people in the state of Arkansas should be forced to deal with people from California that want to immigrate over to that state? Yeah, of course. That's part of being part of the United States of America. Same thing with being part of the European Union. You get a buy-in to, like, the largest market in the world, I believe, unless you're counting the USMCA or whatever, which I don't think counts, actually. No, the European Union is the largest unified market in the world, right? And then all the other host of benefits you get from being in the European Union, then you're going to have to abide by some things as well. You're part of the Schengen free movement thing. You have to do that. If you're in the EEA or whatever, you have to do that. Like, yeah, of course. The pillar of the EU was free trade between member states, not centralized authority in Luxembourg. First of all, I don't know if I would call it centralized authority, because European law is voted on by all of the European Union member states, number one. Number two, I don't believe the pillar of the EU is only free trade. Free movement was a really big deal as well for the European Union. Being able to freely move and settle from one state to another without passport checks, without having to get visas or whatever, that was a really big deal as well. It's not Luxembourg. I don't know what. I usually hear people say Brussels. I don't know where the actual fucking EU buildings are or whatever, or where I don't know. What?
What do you want?
To fuck yo mama. Economic integration was the founding pillar, though. All the political stuff came after. Sure, you can call it what you want. Okay, stop doing this dumb fucking shit where you go back like 50 years to try to argue about today. I don't know why people do this. So people are talking about, like, how should we do the United States today? Well, the founding fathers said, I don't give a fuck. The founding fathers are dead. They've been dead for 200 fucking years. Where are we at with case law? Where are we at with, like, our precedents? How is shit established now? What benefits is now? Like, I don't give a fuck what somebody said 150 years ago, right? So when somebody's like, well, the European Union was established on blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, who the fuck cares? What is the European Union about now? One of the big things in the European Union now is free movement between member states. That's a huge deal in the European Union. It's one of the coolest things about the European Union. It's not just fucking, arguably, it's a cooler thing than, like, some of the economic integration. At least if you're talking about the euro, right? Centralized monetary policy. But now I understand nobody wants to understand macroecon. I don't either, by the way. I would be more scared giving up control of my currency than I would be having fucking open borders and letting infinite North Africans or whatever coming into my country, okay? The economic integration is probably a more challenging prospect than the free movement integration, right? But
On some things, yeah.
On some
It's kind
things,
of like-
including who should be allowed to enter their country?
When it comes to refugees, yeah.
Well, we're talking
Because
about
when
migrants.
No, I don't think you have to abide by. I'm pretty sure for European stuff. Hold on.
No, we're talking about
We're
people
talking
who are
about people
making
who have not been
claims.
decided, and in a lot of cases, they're moving.
I was about to say that's part of being the European Union, but I actually don't actually know that. We should actually look that up because I know that the European Union is really strict in terms of what regulations exist for people passing in between the states, but I don't know how strict the European Union is in terms of regulating who's allowed to come in from outside the European Union. Because I do know, because I thought it was really strange that different countries were able to ban travel from the U.S. So Sweden and I think Italy, or one other country said, we're going to put restrictions on U.S. passengers. And I thought that was strange. I was like, wait, can Sweden do that? I would have thought that I thought that would have happened unilaterally. So it might be actually the case that some individual countries can. EU courts are located in Luxembourg. Okay.
Once again through these countries because the refugee status has been rejected in the first country.
Well, how do you? So
Because they
how
aren't
do you?
actually refugees in a lot of cases.
Well, no, you're you're just speaking to like a few examples that you found. You don't know if someone is a refugee or a migrant until they claim asylum. So you need to give them the opportunity to claim asylum. And we have laws against existing in a country and not claiming asylum. That actually incurs deportation. So again, how do you know unless they can't arrive? Because what you're saying, and it seems like what Generation
okay, so
Identity is saying,
I
still let
have
them come
friends
at all.
of mine that are like refugees that have immigrated, for example, to Australia, Bosnia, and they were part of, their families were in a lot of the wars in that were going on in Eastern Europe. And you know, they were able to put claims in before they actually left their country to go to the new country, and that happens in a lot of cases. In fact, that's typically how refugee claims occur.
No, that can happen. It's not typically how claims occur.
Okay,
because
so
what if
not
the embassy...
typically, but that is a possibility, and probably looking at the crisis occurring right now is the better form of
Something that I'm trying to get away from, and call me out if I do this, I try to look these things up when I can. This is why I'm like, okay, hold on, let's look at this. Wait, hold on. Is people use a lot of weasel words, and I don't like calling them weasel words because it's implying that something bad is happening, but maybe it's not that they're intentionally doing it. But when people say things like, oh yeah, a lot of cases like this are like that, a lot of the times this happens like that, you know, this happens frequently. What does that mean, right? So if you say, for instance, like a lot of the immigrants coming into Europe are lying about their refugee status, if a lot there is like 90%, that's really fucked up. But if a lot is like 2 or 3%, well, what is it historically? Is that actually a lot? Like, it is a lot maybe in an absolute number, but like, is that something to be concerned about? Or is that like pretty normal? Because it's never going to be 0%, right? Now, but I mean, everybody does this. I do this as well.
of making an application, then ending up in Camp Moria and having it burned down because you're so miserable where you are and you can't get status because you don't actually have, you found out you don't actually have a right to asylum even though your human trafficker told you you would.
Yeah, so again, like if you can claim asylum through an embassy, people would do that rather than risk a 1 in 50 chance of dying across the sea. Because the thing with the embassy, like you said, it's an option. They don't have to do that. And you probably have to assume that every journey into Europe is dangerous. Even the Balkan route is dangerous. So if they're not claiming asylum in an embassy and just coming over instead, it's because that's their human right. That's their right under international law. So again, it's an option to claim at assembly.
So
but
what
at
would
the
you
embassy.
do? What would you do about the mass amounts of people? And I do remember reading European Union data. I'd have to go back and find it, saying it was actually the majority who were coming over for economic reasons at one point in around 2016, 2017. What would you do about those who are attempting to make refugee claims, but they're actually just economic migrants?
Well, if your refugee claim fails, then you get deported. I mean, that should be the case anyway.
So just send them all back?
Not all of them, the ones who fail their claims, yeah.
Yeah, so you'd get them on airplanes and send them home? What if they've destroyed their passports so you don't know what home is for them?
Again, that's like a legal gray zone, but that's not speaking to the larger issues. Like,
No, that is
people come over
almost,
anyway.
if you don't have a legitimate claim to refugee status and you're coming from a country that you know you can be deported to and you want to stay, a lot of them, a large amount, destroy their passports
A lot.
like before they even get to the water.
I know. I'm just really interested in this claim about
destroyed passports all over the ground. So, like, what do you do about that? Because this is the question at hand.
I don't doubt that you saw a bunch of destroyed passports, but again, like, what are the stats on that? Because most people who arrive, as far as I remember, they make claims.
Well, they attempt to, and a lot fail, unfortunately. And then you have a bunch of people stuck in limbo under bridges and in camps, which, as you said, has increased anti-migrant sentiment all across Europe. It's a problem, and it's a problem that I can accept is complex, and you bring up good points, but you still you've still massively got the problem when you don't stop where it's occurring. As you've said, one thing is to potentially stop the push factors, and I am all for investigating and what we can do there. But sometimes the push factors, and in a lot of cases, are just general poverty. And I think if we're speaking in a sane manner, we know world poverty is unfortunately just never going to go away. So in that case, you have to go to the next push factor, which is the fact that, you know, you just have a trafficking service happening in the Mediterranean and open borders there. So
I mean, are you still describing the NGOs as a trafficking service? Because I thought we kind of just established that they were doing everything within their rights.
Oh, I think the Mare Nostrum mission that was actually arresting traffickers while picking up people that were genuinely in distress wasn't a trafficking service. But if you are just a service that is going off into, you know, foreign waters, picking people up and bringing them back in, that's a trafficking service, of course. And that was exactly what was occurring. I haven't explored Libya, but I've explored the other two largest points, Turkey and Morocco, and that is exactly what was happening there.
Well, Morocco, okay, but again, NGOs doing I think when you were talking about NGOs like actually doing trafficking, like, you don't actually buy that those investigations are not turning out any evidence of them, including with smugglers, though.
I think they are absolutely going and picking up people that are not in distress. Of course, you don't think that's happening?
Well, no, because
you don't think if they find a boat of people that are doing just fine, they don't pick them up anyways? Like, because I know how I would think if I were doing that. I'd be like, yeah, help them out. Let's pick them up, and then we'll just say they were in distress when we get back. Of course they'd do that.
Why would they? Again, what? Because they're globalists or whatever. I don't know.
Well, because they want people to come over no matter what. They're open borders. Of course, they support that. They just say, yeah, we have to skirt the legal thing. And I know this because we've talked to them.
Okay, so yeah, that's just like, okay, maybe I'm sure that some of the ones you talked to were, but again, like, when NGOs have been accused of this, they have to publish. You can look at the Juventa case. This was one where they actually had to publish all of their logs, like, because NGOs film all their missions. They have evidence of them doing this.
Do they?
And yeah, you can look up the Juventa case if you want. They released all their archives.
I'll go look at it. It can be really. Do you actually have the court documents? Because it can be so difficult. Like with the Panos case, like they're actually ERCI are still under investigation. You know, like they're.
I know they are. So I mean, the Aquarius are still under investigation for dropping AIDS into the sea. You know, these investigations.
Yeah, so these investigations aren't over, and as we both know, sometimes. Excuses will be made that are legitimate but are made to actually discover further criminal activities. So someone who's a massive gang member will be arrested for, you know, having pot on them, but the intention will be to further an investigation into their activities or give the police rights to be able to have a search warrant for their home to find something bigger. And I assume certainly Salvini, and I at least think you'd agree with this, Salvini and the prosecutors working with him are probably hoping to investigate more with this case than just AIDS blankets.
Yeah, but why would I don't know if I can trust anyone who's worried about AIDS blankets, but anyway,
what I'm saying is there is a bigger thing going on than just the AIDS blankets, but the AIDS blankets don't know that, like, they were able to get them on. Because of course they've been accusing them of people trafficking for years. So of course I know that. I know they think that.
Yeah, so why the AIDS blankets though? That's so
because
weird.
They could catch them on that because they actually have the physical.
How can you catch
here's
someone?
The clothing. Here's the.
How can you catch someone in AIDS blankets though?
It's HIV infected clothes, as you stated on your.
Does that work? Can you infect? Does HIV survive for a long time outside the body? I know some viruses are pretty durable and other viruses aren't. I don't know how. Stable how long HIV can survive outside like some biological environment or whatever.
your video from.
But you can't get HIV from clothes.
What do you? So it's clothing that has been contaminated.
Yeah, you can't get clothing. You can't get HIV from clothes. Even if there's blood on the clothes, you can't get HIV from like touching HIV like clothes. HIV.
Oh yeah, duh. Wait, I know this, of course. There was a really big deal when Princess Diana started shaking hands with people that had AIDS, because there was a weird misconception in the 60s, 70s, 80s that like if somebody has AIDS, if you even touch them, you're fucked. You're gonna get AIDS. It's like, no, that's not how HIV transmits. I don't remember if saliva to saliva can do it, but I think it always has to happen like blood to blood, or I think sexual fluid to blood. Although sexual fluid to blood is pretty low as well. But Destiny, you can just surrender for both wars. Oh, you're like behind like 10 minutes, my dude.
He
So
dies as
let's
soon as it leaves.
look up. Let's look at. Well, okay. Well, let's look it up because there must be
We can
some
look up
sort
the
of
CDC,
law that
can't
they're
we?
going under. Like I
Yeah,
assume they aren't contaminated.
They were going under toxic waste, but again,
Right.
like clothes, the clothes of people who have HIV is not toxic waste. It was just labeled as special waste, and that was it. Like,
Okay, well,
You can't
I'd have to
get-
look into the law because I'm sure, like, medical clothing, you know, when you go into a hospital and there's, like, the blood bins, you throw it in there and it's considered toxic
Yeah,
waste if
so-
it's people who have diseases. So,
Well, hold on. That's way different, though. There are absolutely blood illnesses or illnesses that exist in the body that if you touch blood, you will get fucked or whatever. I want to say malaria and maybe tuberculosis, I think, are things that are like highly contagious, like even from dead bodies. You can like, oh shit, if you, some forms of hepatitis, or if you touch like the blood or whatever, that can fuck you. But that doesn't mean that all viruses are like that, or that HIV specifically is like that.
I mean, I assume there was some legal precedent for that. As I said, I have not done a full legal analysis of your video, and it can be, and after doing your research, I am sure you would agree with this. It is a bitch to find European actual case documents, especially using like English Google, having to put in all the little preferences and be like, no, put it in Greek, no, from this time, no, legal cases, Google Scholar, and it's just like you're getting to the
Yeah.
11th page of Google.
This one I'm going to send you actually has like images as well of the
Yeah, contaminated
Contaminated.
medical waste or biohazard.
yeah, but it's again, it's not a biohazard if it's clothes that someone who had AIDS wore. Like, it's just such a strange accusation. It's like I think I know why they did
because
it.
I
because-
assume the media, like, as we both know, the media they're like AIDS blankets. They won't
Well,
actually.
no, this is what the prosecutors said. They
Okay,
said it
well,
was
let's-
clothing contaminated.
Okay, do you have the actual like prosecution document not interpreted by the media?
Is that what you had? Because you're the one that made the claim. I got the claim from you.
Well, that's what I read from the media. That's why the ship was shut down.
So you took the media at their word. I'm doing the same.
So
Like,
I'm
just
saying that's
it's
why
just
the
weird
ship
that they
was shut
said-
down. But if you're saying that it's like a bizarre legal claim that has no precedent, we'd have to actually look at the legal documents.
Well,
Like,
I don't
like,
need-
I
I don't
get
even-
what
I
you're
don't need
saying.
to
Like,
look at
oh,
it.
you can't catch HIV from just this clothes. Well, let's see what the
Well, I know
actual
why they
literal
said-
legal
Because if
claims.
you accuse someone of something, that has to get investigated. And if you say they were mismanaging toxic waste, then they have to investigate that.
Mm-hmm.
But since the toxic waste they're referring to is clothes of people who had HIV,
Right, okay, well, like I said, I'll have to actually look into what laws are around that and why they have that law in. And that's just what I know, that the ship was initially impounded and shut down by Italy anyways. I know it had been impounded and shut down in multiple other countries before for their activities. But, yeah.
what
I
other
have-
activities were they impounded for?
I just know that other countries had taken away their license and ability before.
No, that's not impounding though. If they take away their, I mean, there's a whole.
I'm
bit-
pretty
the
sure
story
they were
about the
impounded in
license.
Spain as well. Impounded.
Were they impounded by Spain or were they just there?
Let's see.
I know because I know their charge is for AIDS clothes. Like that's what they're under investigation for.
It's so hard to find information on the Aquarius case, though. I was like, I couldn't find anything in the last year from the short Googling I did before.
Well, I'm just wondering why you brought
okay,
it up
wait.
then, because
Because I'm saying, like, that beyond people are like, you're trying to be a, a non-government enforcer of the law, Lauren. And I'm like, well, the government have actually impounded and,
Well, they
taken
didn't
the ship in
impound.
themselves.
Well, no, they took the ship in a year after you did your thing with the boat.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like the
Yeah,
ship
so there was nothing. There was
the
actually
ship
like, no-
had been accused of illegal activity, and
Mhm.
they had been taken in and impounded by the government, and were not allowed to sail anymore. So people were accusing me of being this force of like, you think you're above the law, but I'm like, no, the law actually decided that the ship was problematic as well. And we'll have to
Yeah,
go
but
through the
there were-
specific things that they have put forward. That was one of the reasons, the toxic waste, which I'm sure there is more to that than just what the media have reported, because we'll have to get the exact case documents, but that was the reason the government have impounded the ship, and the government have decided that there was at least some premise or standing for them to do that and to stop their missions.
Again, like, so yeah, again, toxic waste didn't come up until after. That's post hoc. And again, trafficking, there wasn't even an investigation or like a charge.
There was an
This is just, like, people-
investigation,
The investigation didn't start until 2018, didn't it? 2017, 2018?
so there was an investigation.
That's not the point. The point is, was there an investigation at the time you claimed, and not did one happen afterwards? That's why he uttered post hoc earlier.
Oh, but you're
Yeah, I
saying
know there was an
happened
investigation,
after.
but it didn't. Yeah, it happened after, didn't it? Because
Yeah,
you weren't
that's-
talking about them. You were talking
That's
about them
irrelevant
bringing in
because
illegals.
the point was that there are illegal migrants coming in that don't actually have refugee status, and we're finding that out more and more going forward, that these people don't actually have claim to refugee status, and something needs to happen about this, because at the moment, sorry about to sneeze.
Yeah, so this again, this has nothing to do with illegal activity or infected blankets.
Okay,
does it?
the first illegal activity is migrants coming in without refugee status, so they're committing the
Is it illegal?
illegal
It's not.
activity.
What,
The boat.
what the boat is the boat doing that? Because the boat's supposed to take people to the next port of call, which was Italy. The boat was supposed to do that.
I'm still not sure. So let's see. Can you link me that European Union document, next port of call?
Well, what is the boat supposed to do otherwise? Let's just talk through this. What's the alternative? Are they supposed to leave them and drown? Are they supposed to process them right there? Like, what else is supposed to happen, right?
Next port of call is. Let me find it. I think I've got it open here. It's
Why am I getting
UN.
specialist
Here we go. Yeah, it's
population
actually
here?
in your
UN.
When I need
PDFs.
workers.
It's in the one that ends in 94 PDF. And if you just look at page 8, next port of call.
So that's UN though.
Someone in chat's calling me LonerBox. That's really funny.
LonerBox. Oh, I hate doing research while on stream, but let's see this. All right.
I'm sorry. I don't want to be
can't
rude.
find-
I don't want to be rude, but I feel like this is the kind of research you'd want to do before making claims against a refugee boat that's saving.
Well, no.
thousands of
At the time, I had of course done a lot of the research. It's been what, 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21. It's been like 5 years, right? 4 or 5 years.
Mhm.
It's been a minute since I've been looking into this ship and its actions, and the first time I've done a whole lot of looking into it was probably that last video I did, the Vindicated one you reviewed, and then like yesterday doing a bit of Googling about and looking through some of the data you posted below your video. So it's been a minute since I've actually done a look into the update. And in Borderless, obviously I was reporting on the specific organizations between Turkey and Greece and Morocco and Spain, which is why I have a lot more to say on them right now than I do about the Aquarius, because that's been the most recent research I've done into it.
Okay.
I'm
so
not
again,
seeing
so
anything about
maybe-
next port of call in this document you sent me.
If you control find,
I did.
is you on page 8? Next port of call.
Did you send me something after that? Blaming the rest?
No, I
Oh,
sent you
it's the
something
first
after.
one,
I
yeah.
said 94. Yeah, 94 PDF.
So this is UN though.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Background
I said it
note.
was UN.
Scientific
High
breakthrough achieved.
Oh, of course my quick search isn't working. Oh, find on page. There we are. Okay. A ship port of call.
Oh shit, I'm fucked.
Which page was it? 8? Clearly.
8. It's section 30.
Okay, there we go. Next port of call. In summary, the executive committee, blah, 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 blah. In summary, the executive committee pronouncement taken into conjunction with the obligation under international maritime law to ensure delivery to a place of safety call upon coastal states to allow disembarkation of rescued asylum seekers at the next port of call. In accordance with international practice, support by the relevant international instruments, persons rescued at sea should normally disembark at the next port of call. This practice should also be applied to asylum seekers rescued at sea. In cases of large-scale influx, asylum seekers rescued at sea should always be admitted, at least on a temporary basis. States should assist in facilitating their disembarkation by acting in accordance with the principles of international solidarity and burden sharing in granting resettlement opportunities. Okay, so this is UN. Now, of course, not everyone agrees to or signs on to UN rules, as we know. So what is it?
I know, it's just that you brought up maritime laws.
Okay, but yeah,
So
that's
that's
what I'm saying. Let's look at the maritime laws that actually cover Italy. Like, is this the maritime law?
This is maritime law. This is it's that background note on the protection of asylum seekers and refugees rescued at sea.
But that's
International
just
maritime law.
Okay.
Yeah, this is international maritime law. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to actually look into this a bit more because I'm not sure if from the time that I was looking into this, it was definitely the closest port you have to drop them off at if it is someone at sea. So.
And again, well, first of all, I think the qualifier, even if that's true in the case of the Aquarius, it would be the closest port of safety. Libya is not a port of safety. Morocco is further away. The Moroccan waters are further away from Spain, let alone Italy. So.
And I also wonder, because this is a document entirely.
I like how someone in your chat is quoting like half of the paragraph and saying it debunks me. That's really funny.
What did they say?
Sorry.
There may be instances where the next port of call may not be the closest one, but rather the one best equipped for the purposes of receiving traumatized and injured victims and subsequently processing any asylum applications. In other situations involving state vessels intercepting illegal migrants, the nearest port of that state could be regarded as the most appropriate port for disembarkation purposes. So I do think that this does say intercepting illegal migrants, you put them in the most appropriate state, which means the state they came from. Would you not agree?
Well, how do you know they're illegal if you found them at sea?
Maybe if they're coming through trafficker vessels through countries which typically have
No, we're reaching into the bad faith zone now. The only reason I'm going to say is there's no way to know that, right? There's no way to know. You have to take them somewhere to process them. You know that you can't say this.
With migrant applications like Turkey, which is a safe second country, or like Morocco, which the vast majority of people are not coming with asylum seeking applications.
Again, coming from a safe country, well, first of all, these people came from Libya. They come from Libya, not Turkey. And again, they're in the sea from Libya, and being in a safe country, even if they were, doesn't instantly make you an illegal immigrant. The people who rescue them are not determining their legal status. How do you know they're illegal when you found them at sea?
Mate, I don't know what to tell you. There's a reason why Australia has the policies they do and why they have worked so well, and why Europe is currently dealing with a bunch of people living under bridges and burning down migrant camps in Greece. What is happening right now is not working.
Okay, again, that's just okay. So why are you making all these claims then? If you just want them all to get sent to whatever Christmas Island, or even just to stay in the country that they would otherwise.
Maybe that is a solution. Maybe they should be sent to an island to be processed first, so there isn't this drive factor, which is saying, yeah, you get into Europe and you can just keep shopping around until someone accepts your asylum claim, and if they don't, well, the trafficker has probably lied to you and told you that they'll get it anyways. There are can we at least agree something needs to change, because right now it's not working. And if you hold the policy which you're suggesting, which is you just let everyone in because you may or may not know if they're a migrant or not, that's going to result. That is what
we already do.
Yeah, and it's not working. It's not working.
It's not working because people are first of all, they keep on declaring countries like Libya as safe countries, like, which is kind of difficult. And then the second thing
So
is,
should
they're
anyone
not
from
really-
Libya be able to come? Like, should the entire country of Libya, every single person who lives there, be able to come to Europe?
You don't
and
have
not be
to
turned
do
back?
you
No,
don't
I'm
have to
serious.
go
Like
with
that.
this. You don't have to go with the slippery slope fallacy again,
No, it's
because
not a
they can
slippery
already
slope.
do that, and
You
they don't do
actually
it.
have to consider these things. Like, should anyone from Libya be allowed to come to Europe and claim refugee status?
Do you say anyone or everyone? Again, that's
Anyone.
different. Because
Should
yeah,
anyone.
yeah. In Libya, yeah.
And
Unless
be
they're like
given-
fucking no. Like, again, claim. Unless they're like, I don't know if they're part of whatever that group's called, not the GNA, the other ones. Yeah.
Okay.
But again, you have to find that in the processing, sir, in the processing.
So what do you do when you like? Let's see. How many refugees? Do you think there needs to be a cap on refugees and migration in countries?
Refugee caps are like the amount of refugees that go through these countries is already pretty low, is my understanding. There's not like 1 trillion fucking refugees. In terms of like your overall immigration population, pretty sure refugees make up like a pretty small part of that. At least in the US they do. In Europe it's probably a bit higher since it's easier, but percentage of German immigrants that are refugees. Around 13.7 million people living in Germany, or about 70% of our first generation immigrants. How many Germans are refugees? German hosts more than 1 million refugees. In 2020, Germany reported almost 1.15 million refugees and 309,000 asylum seekers. This made Germany the biggest host country for refugees in Europe. So even Germany, that is, I want to say Germany took on more than anybody else, less than 10% of their overall immigrant population. And I don't know if this 13.7 million even includes it. So it might be even a little bit less. To be fair, 8% or 9% is still fairly high, but it's not like refugees make up like 50, like the majority of people coming in or anything. I wish I could find this for like just like across like all of the European Union.
Like an absolute number?
Yeah.
I don't think so, no.
So, and I know you're gonna call this a slippery slope, but the amount of people who are in poor countries in turmoil actually probably outweighs the amount of countries that are not in turmoil and have a bit of wealth.
Yeah, and believe it or not, most of them never like have the opportunity to come to Europe now, and they don't do it. Why is everyone calling this open borders? Like, we already have, like, the international law for refugees is already open borders, and people don't leave.
Well, no,
Most
a lot
people
of people
stayed
don't
in
leave
Jordan,
because they
Lebanon.
can't. They just don't have the ability, and they know that they wouldn't be. They probably realize they'll be sleeping under bridges because there's just no more money to support them in a lot of these countries. There's no more. The systems are overburdened.
Well, they do. I mean, I think typically.
In which countries does anybody have a source on that? What are the countries where the systems are overburdened? I know that there are problems sometimes with like crime and stuff, but like, are there actually countries that can't in Europe that, because I mean, what we just saw on this page here was like Germany is obviously doing fine. Does anybody if anybody has like a news article, I'd be curious just to read it.
They would know.
Like if I had the money right now, I'm not joking, I would take you on a trip, and I promise you right now, I'm pinky swearing, if I win the lottery and you have to promise back to me, I will take you on a trip. You can come with me on a trip to Morocco. We'll go to Porte de la Chapelle. We'll go to Calais. We will go to the Greek islands, and we'll meet these people. And you can tell me if you think that we should be letting everyone in Europe, and if this.
No,
this
Lauren,
system
I'm
is
not
working.
gonna go on a little trip and like
No,
with a
you're
bunch
saying
of preconceived.
No,
I'm not gonna go.
You don't have to accept anything I say. I'm just saying I'll take you there, and you can go loose, have your own time.
Yeah,
drink a
because
beer, meet everyone.
I mean, I personally don't agree with the idea of going like with a bunch of preconceived notions and just looking at
I
things.
didn't tell you to
I don't
have
really gather
preconceived
information.
notions. I told you I'd just take you there to see it for yourself.
Everyone goes with preconceived notions. That's why
Well,
I
your
tend to look at the
preconceived
data.
notions are probably against my opinions anyways, so.
Well, like yeah, exactly. But me finding something finding something that suits me and using it against you wouldn't prove anything. I could just film a bunch of cherry-picked situations
No, but,
and then
like-
say like this proves my case. Again, like this is what happens though when you do things that way, is you end up forgetting about maritime laws on ports of safety or following through with cases on AIDS blankets. You have nothing. Like you just end up making like these kind of strange like kind of proxy arguments. So again, like what do you want to do with these people when like even generation identity? I'm asking again, I'm not sure if you've answered yet. People getting rescued in the sea, They don't have to be an NGO. They can just be a commercial vessel going fishing. What are they supposed to do?
What do you mean? What are they supposed to do if they're a commercial vessel fishing?
Like if you're a commercial vessel and you receive a distress call, maritime laws, you have to rescue them. What do you
course.
do? So what do you do? What do you do with them?
Of course, if you are
Or even a generation
receiving-
identity? What?
If you are receiving a distress call, you have to help them. That is, of course, maritime law. But going out into waters and with the deliberate intention of picking people up in boats, working for some of these NGOs that are deliberately coaching people to try to get them refugee status they don't apply for, as they've told us, having missions where you go out on sea-doos every day and pick people up and bring them over, like, something needs to change here, and perhaps that change is only allowing embassy applications for refugee status the same way they do in Australia, or only allowing the application to come from a place like Christmas Island. Maybe they get an island where they make all the applications happen from there.
But I thought you were saying that you don't...
Making it happen from somewhere which is already like largely inhabited tends to ruin that island and cause a lot of conflict, because you have a bunch of people, anyone, doesn't matter where you're from or what your background is, I'd be the same, a bunch of people with no hope, no opportunity, no status for, no potential future because they've destroyed their identification and they can't apply for refugee status. Putting all those people in one place, whether it be in Italy or an island or in the middle of France, causes a lot of violence and chaos and destroys communities. So you have to ask yourself, right now the system is not working. It's not working. Do we keep going as we're going? And that seems to be your suggestion. Because I'm saying the Australian system is better. Just shut it all down, because you can't even help the people in your own country.
I did not say keep going. First of all, distress calls can be received from boats that are docked or coast guards. The Italian Coast Guard does like a quarter of the rescues in some years. So even you're not going to get rid of the entire Coast Guard, right? Because that would mean there'd be a potential for rescue missions.
I didn't say to get rid of the entire Coast Guard.
Well, yeah, but the Coast Guard can do rescue missions. So again, so you're saying like rescue missions will happen, people will move, and then what, they get put into a detention island. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to look at Australia for the next day or two and find that there's massive like human rights abuses happening in Christmas Island. And again, if they can't come over to Australia, where do they go? Do they stay in the island that they would
A lot of people live there for
fleeing?
a long time. A lot of people live on Christmas Island for a long time. But it's a question of...
How many people are in Christmas Island right now?
Let me see. It's the amount of people that actually leave and try to come now is massively reduced, and their drownings are down to 0 though.
Again, drownings, again, like if you applied this to somewhere like Libya, the number of drownings decreasing doesn't mean anything if they're just ending up
as
in
of
Libyan
2010,
detention.
there were 1,400 people living on Christmas Island, but that says population, so I'm not sure if those are the people impounded or how
Again,
many
I'm
people...
thinking we're talking about where they come from. So again, if you stop the boats from Libya, then I don't really care if drownings go down. That means they're in Libya. They're in detention centers and facing human rights abuses where they might as well be dead.
You're not understanding. Like someone just mentioned in the chat, when they stopped the boats, refugees, quote unquote, stopped flying into Indonesia. Right? There was a draw for people to actually go to these countries, and that's what was happening. People that were, and I'm going to use Morocco as a context because that's where I've been on the ground, but I know it's happening in Libya too. People were going to these countries. They were going into these situations. They were putting themselves in situations where they were potentially going to go into capsized boats, where they were going into countries like Libya, where, yeah, if you get caught, you're probably going to have a pretty bad time. It's probably going to be horrible. But people are going into these situations because there is a draw there. There is a driver, which is the fact of open borders, the government. And you know what? I don't blame these people, because the government in Europe and NGOs, all these activists have been telling them for decades, yeah, open borders. Smugglers are telling them that too. Open borders. You come in, you're going to get a house. We're going to take care of you. Our home is for refugees. Everyone's got the signs out. You know, we reject no one. So they're going into these situations. A few things are happening. One, they get caught anyways. Doesn't matter what the policy in Europe is, and they go to a Libyan jail, and it's horrible. 2, the boat capsizes and it's horrible. 3, they get across to Europe and they don't get any refugee status or any status at all because they were illegally migrating and didn't have a right to it, and they end up living under a bridge or getting killed in one of their camps.
More than half of the people get their claims eventually accepted. I think it's 40% immediately and then another 29% after
Okay,
that.
so you still are left
again,
with hundreds of thousands of people. in limbo.
I'm saying that's a problem, but I'm saying it's not worth sending a bunch of people who, in your words, who get their claims accepted.
What is the stat? The half of? Is it half of people that come by sea, or is it half of actual refugees, or half of people who make claims?
Why do you keep contrasting people who come by sea and with actual refugees?
Because not everyone that comes by sea is an actual refugee. Plenty are just
Not everyone
economic
that-
migrants.
Not everyone that comes across in any way would be like an actual refugee, though. Right?
Yeah,
You would
sure.
expect you would expect people coming from
So
sea
what
the
is
most
this
dangerous way.
of half the people who get accepted?
Scientific.
Half the people who claim asylum.
Half
get
the people who
accepted,
claim
yeah.
asylum, right? So how many of that is the actual portion coming over?
What do you mean the portion coming over?
Like the actual people coming over on boats that are trying to migrate to Europe. What percentage of those are actually get accepted as refugees?
I don't really know if they would file that, would they? If they're like in the asylum process and they're gathering data saying we need to gather stats on asylum seekers who came by sea. Asylum claims by sea, I don't know. Why does that matter though? Because again, like you keep saying like actual
Okay.
refugees
You know
versus
what?
people from boats.
All right. I have to end this stream pretty soon here, so I'll just really try to clarify. No, I'm 20 minutes over. I just realized.
It's fine. It's
and I'm
fine.
fine to
I
talk
said
to
I
you
had 10
again.
minutes.
Yeah, I'm totally good to talk to you again. But no, I'll just really clarify my position here. There are a lot of people coming over. I would say the majority, based on what I have observed, the majority that do not actually have any claim to refugee status, that are not being processed in any meaningful way into the systems in Europe, whether they be in Greece, Italy, Germany, France, Spain. They are disappointed, rightfully so. They've been promised things by human traffickers that could never be fulfilled. In a lot of cases, they're homeless. In a lot of cases, they have no hope. In a lot of cases, they have no ability to work or make a living because they, once again, could not make any claim in these countries. And it is going to lead to disaster, both for these people and both for the European people, because a lot of people that are miserable with no hope is dangerous in any situation. Doesn't matter what your skin color is, doesn't matter what your gender is. A lot of people with absolutely no hope, no jobs, nothing, that were sold a lie. That is dangerous. That is dangerous anywhere you go. And there's going to be a lot of misery, a lot of disappointment, a lot of crime, which we are already seeing in these places. And I mean, once again, just this year, the camp was literally burnt to the ground in Moria because the migrants.
Okay, we got it.